Hello, everyone. We are back here on the Frank Delano Show, our first ever guest episode. Today, I'm joined by Justin Curry, and today we're going to be breaking down the entire NCAA season, giving out some awards, and just talking ball. So let's jump right into it with the best quarterback this season. Justin, who do you have in that spot?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the cop out answer for a lot of guys would be Cam Ward, but probably for me too, honestly. You just look at the stats, look at what he's done this year, besides that, that decision he made for himself in that Pop Tarts Bowl. He's just been very consistent with his playing, had great stats, great efficiency. Shadur Sanders, his problem was just reading defenses. That was his main issue. So for that, I would definitely take Cam Ward. Probably, if I'm Tennessee, I'm taking him number one right now. And
I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I think in general it was just kind of a down year for the quarterback position in general because, you look at Ohio State and Notre Dame and it's not like their quarterbacks really carried them there. They were just they played within the system. And,
Right.
yeah, Cam Ward, 4,313 yards, 39 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. I think especially for a team like Tennessee who, Will Levis is a bust. I think we can kind of put the label on that at this point. And getting rid of Malik Willis, seeing what he did, I just think it's time for a fresh start with a fresh quarterback. You got a young coach. It's just time for an overhaul. So we're both going to put Cam Ward. Next up, we got who is your pick for the best running back? And I think I know who it might be.
Yeah. See, obviously, got to go with Genty. However, I think the combo at Ohio State with Henderson and Judkins definitely is the best overall running back core in the nation. As you see what they did last night in the national championship. NFL prospect-wise, I'd probably say Henderson and Judkins are higher overall than Genty, but Genty definitely he produced this year, and obviously if Travis Hunter wasn't the two-way guy, he probably would have been that Heisman.
I agree. 2,600 yards. I mean, so close to breaking the record. 29 touchdowns, 30 total touchdowns if you're counting receiving. I just wanted to give a shout out to Cam Scadaboo. I know he is not getting the flowers that he, wants, but he had a heck of a season. 1,700 rush yards, 21 touchdowns, 600 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns. And when you really look at it, he carried that team through the playoffs. I mean, just making the plays when they needed to be made, throwing up on the sideline, coming back in, just making some crazy plays, falling just short to Texas in a controversial ending. But still, great season for Scadaboo, his draft stock, especially coming from like a JUCO, basically. Him and Cam Ward both came from JUCOs, so just really shows you that no matter how high or low of a prospect you are, you can still succeed at every level. So
Scadabo for sure. His toughness is pretty much his main. You saw that grade he had in that game against Texas. That's really what made him produce the way he did this season. Just the fighting effort he had all year.
For sure. So who is your pick for the best wide receiver in 2024-25?
I would say personally, that's just different for every team. I would say, Nick Nash, obviously, he had the yards, all of that type stuff. McMillan, he's tough. Didn't finish the year. Honestly, my dark horse for this pick would probably be a guy like Jeremiah Smith. Like, we see what he did. We see what he did yesterday, last night in the national championship. He's probably the most unguardable guy in the nation. And what he's did in the playoffs and what he's done consistently, I think that would be my sleeper pick, Jeremiah Smith.
I would agree, but I also think that for this one, it's simple. It's obvious. It's Nick Nash. I mean, he won the Triple Crown, 104 receptions, 1,382 yards, 16 touchdowns, just a clean sweep for receivers, and I have no idea how he didn't win Best Receiver. I understand Travis Hunter. He's a two-way player. That's great. But if you're talking the best wide receiver in the nation, it's Nick Nash, and it's not even close. It's not even close. Yeah. So that was a little bit of controversy there. I personally believe that he's a better receiver than Travis Hunter. He may not be a better all-around player, but that's not what the award was for. So, yeah. Coming in next, who is your pick for best tight end of the season?
Yeah, another guy who's not talked about a lot, I'd probably say Harold Fannin from Bowling Green. Pretty sure he's up there in the yardage for the nationwide in general. I think he has about 1,700 yards this season. Another guy was a little sleeper pick, Mitchell Evans. Just see what he's done for Notre Dame. They didn't really feed him the ball too much. But I'd definitely say my main pick would be Harold Fannin.
Yeah, the only name I wrote down was Harold Fannin. I mean, 117 receptions. He's got 1,600 yards, 10 touchdowns. Pace tight ends in pretty much every major stat. I understand Tyler Warren, Penn State. You got the name, you got the brand. But when you're looking at just production from the tight end position, nobody even came close to Harold Fannin this year. And I'm really excited to see, how he's gonna progress coming out of Bowling Green. It's not a very highly touted school, but it'll be very interesting to see where he goes from here.
Yeah, definitely be a sleeper pick coming up in this year's draft.
Yes, sir. So who do you got for best defensive back?
Obviously, the award went to Jahad Barron, which was, he dominated pretty much in the SEC, not allowing a lot of receptions. Personally, he was up there. Travis Hunter had a pretty good year at DB, but obviously when you have him and then McKinney over there, they're going to throw McKinney the ball more. So it'd probably be between Jahad Barron, maybe a Will Johnson if he didn't get hurt, but I'd probably pick Jahad Barron. He was just very consistent throughout the season.
Yeah, I had Jahad Barron, but I also had a sleeper pick out of the ACC, Noel Williams out of Cal. He was first in the nation with eight interceptions. He's just a playmaker. If you ever caught any Cal games, I know that it's kind of a thing. Like, I guess it's not Pac-12 at night anymore. It's ACC at night. But he was really fun to watch. He was a playmaker. I think he picked off Cam Ward, one of his 7 interceptions. So sleeper. I didn't want to go just base stock what everyone agreed on. I think I want to give a guy his flowers in Noel Williams. Yeah. So who do you got for best linebacker?
Now, linebacker, this is a tough one, to be honest. There's many names. Decent choice would be like Anthony Hill from Texas. He's a consistent guy in the middle over there. Another sleeper guy would be like Jack Kaiser out of Notre Dame. It's just one of those two for me in general. I think one of those two would be one of the main stories for me. Just get hard to decide between those two, depending on.
Yeah, I put down Jack Kaiser. I also put down Jack Sawyer out of Ohio State. He's kind of hybrid, but he showed a lot of heart this year. Yeah. You want to talk about that interception against Michigan. I know they didn't get it done, but that was a huge play. I mean, Michigan going in for a touchdown, biggest rivalry game in college football, at home. Michigan's not very good. They're about to go in for a score, and you just instinctively drop into coverage and make an incredible interception. He played great. He showed immense pride and just toughness, and his story with Jack B. Sawyer, the cancer survivor that he kind of represented throughout the college football playoffs. That was just really cool to see. So he'll be my pick, even though he's kind of hybrid. I'll just call him a linebacker for this.
Because even his play he had against Texas, that strip sack touchdown, that was hugest play of the game. Just you could tell he's that playmaker they need, and when they needed it, he was there for them. Made that play in that big game right there. Finished it off.
I mean, I would argue that he played better than anybody on that team throughout the whole entire playoffs. I mean, he was just making play. Whenever you needed a play on defense, number 33 was going to be in there. He was going to be, that great example of that strip sack. I mean, they're down to their last breath, and he just completely slams the door. Like, a good player would just get that sack and turn it over, but he strips him and takes it 90 yards to the house for the game-sealing touchdown. Leaves no doubt it's over. So again, he's kind of a hybrid. I'm putting him at linebacker for this award. So who do you have for best offensive scheme this season?
Yeah, just like I was talking earlier about the running backs, so with Henderson and Judkins, Ohio State just has just a super strong attack. You could give it to Henderson, give it to Judkins. Then they also have Ekbuka. You got Smith out there. When they're in that spread look, you don't know if they're handing it. You saw it last night. They started running it with Will Howard. They were just, I would say, just their ability to run any offense with the skill they have would be my pick there.
Yeah, I put Oregon because when you look at the numbers that they put up and what Dylan Gabriel was able to do, what James was able to do out of the backfield, up until that Ohio State game where they just completely fell on their face, they were the offense in the nation. I mean, you're looking at the Tez Johnson and all those stars that they have on that team. The offense was so potent, and Dylan Gabriel, I mean, obviously Heisman candidate, didn't end up winning it. Him and Cam Ward were the two quarterback Heisman candidates. I just think that Dan Lanning did a great job with that offensive team. And, it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. Obviously Gabriel, he's out of eligibility, and it'll be very interesting.
Yeah,
so,
looks like Dante Morrissey is in there, so.
Yeah,
See what happens.
So who did you have for best defensive scheme?
Yeah, honestly, usually how they say defense wins championships, I probably have to go with Ohio State there too. I mean, you look at what they did, like you said, Oregon should pick for offense. You see what they did to them. Basically shutting them out that first half and not giving up much at the end. Couple of their DBs didn't play the best all season. Burks had his struggles, but I mean Downs was consistent in that defensive backfield. Then you had Jack Sawyer, getting home. JT Tumialo, had a ton of sacks this season. Their interior was beefed up with Tyleik Williams, and then you had Cody Simon and Sonny Styles there, just making plays, and that's what the difference was. Their red zone defense was basically impossible to score on. So, yeah.
I chose the other team in the national championship. I went with Notre Dame. Just their whole season. I mean, excusing that NIU loss, which was just a terrible football game in every phase. After that game, they really responded well. They were holding opponents. I mean, if you want to call Indiana a fraud, you can do that. But one of the highest scoring offenses in the nation held them to 17 points in the playoffs. They just, they had playmakers all over the place. Very talented, very great coordinator, just very strong defense, and that was one of the reasons that they were even in the. But questionable call at the end of that game. Sending a zero blitz and letting Jeremiah Smith go one-on-one and have him make a play to beat you.
Yeah, I mean, that's been their scheme all year, that man coverage. They came in the game knowing that's what they were going to do. I think maybe if they had a Benjamin Morris in that game, things might have been different, but going one-on-one, on 3rd and 11.
And really, they had put the clamps on Smith in the second half. They were doing a really good job, and it's just a brutal. I mean, you gotta respect the coordinator for having trust in his guys, but at the end of the day, if Jeremiah Smith was a junior, he would be a top 5 pick, and you don't leave top 5 picks on a one-on-one island with a guy who might not even go pro. So, you need at least a safety over there, or put your number 1 corner, and if you don't have him, then put 2. So, but kind of a collapse there at the end, but still a great season from that Notre Dame defense, in my opinion. After the NIU loss, obviously.
Yeah.
So, what did you have for best comeback in a single game?
Probably, I would say Miami versus Cal early on in the year. That was a really big moment. Miami, they were fighting for their playoff lives basically the whole season, and that one would have almost guaranteed took them out at that moment. It was a late game. Probably a lot of people didn't catch it. I think it was like 27-0. And Cam Ward just, with his poise and his calm, they came back. They won that game, and their defense ended up, turning it on late at the end. So that would probably be my pick for that.
Yeah, I picked that game as well. Just a little more context. I mean, it was college game day in California at Cal. It was insane environment. Super late game, obviously. I think I was watching it. It ended at like 2 a.m. Eastern time. They were down 35-10 with 8 minutes left in the third quarter, and Cam Ward just decided to that. Honestly, I think that's at that point in the season, that's when he really turned it on, and I think that his draft stock just completely rose from that game on. To go from 35-10 with 23 minutes left in the game, and you win it 39-38, and you didn't even go to overtime. It was an insane effort from Cam Ward. He completely put the team on his back and just willed them to win that game. And I think that showed a lot of heart. I mean, obviously you talked about him sitting out the second half of that bowl game, but I think that the GMs saw that game when they were down that much, and he didn't quit on his team. He may have quit in the bowl game, but he didn't quit when they were actually playing to make the playoffs and to rise in the rankings, and when there was actually some gravity to the game. He didn't quit on his boys, and he willed them all the way back. So that was my pick for comeback of the year. I mean, if Georgia was able to win that game against Alabama where they were down however much they were down, I think I would have picked that. But still, great game. Great game for sure. So what did you have for best preseason prediction?
Honestly, probably people having Ohio State, in the polls. Like, as I said, I would say they were still a little bit of a surprise. We didn't know what Will Howard was going to do, how he was going to perform. But they ended up really silencing doubters. They finished with 2 losses. That loss to Michigan was, horrible. Offense didn't get going. Defense, made the plays, like you said, Jack Sawyer. But, those 2 losses and then them just finishing out the year, like tough relentlessness, I would have to say that for sure.
I would say, that's what I put. They were number 2 in the preseason poll. I think that was spot on. Obviously, they finished 1. So, when they lost to Oregon, you were like, okay, it was a 1-point loss to the number 1 team. They're still a good squad. They'll still be all right. When they lost to Michigan, I think a lot of people expected them to be done early. Like, a lot of that first round game against Tennessee, when the Tennessee fans kind of invaded the shoe, and it was a lot of orange. I remember sitting at home being like, this could literally just go against Ohio State, and Ryan Day could be done.
Half. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Ryan Day could be done, and the way they responded, the way they just fought their way through. I mean, none of their games were really particularly close in the college football playoff. The Texas game, if you want to call it close, you can, but it like physically, really wasn't that much of a fight. And Ohio State, I think Ryan Day really stepped up. As much hate as you can give the man not beating Michigan, all that stuff, I think he atoned for that 100% by obviously winning the national championship. Huge. There was a few moments in that game last night where Notre Dame looked like they were going to make a push, but Ohio State stepped up. They made the plays when they needed to make them, and they walked out with the trophy, and that's all that matters. So what do you have for your worst preseason prediction?
Honestly, probably Georgia. Like, I know Carson Beck, he ended up getting hurt. Gunnar Stockton didn't really look too bad, but I just don't think Georgia got back to that supreme dominancy that we've seen in the past couple of years. Their defense was, on and off. They weren't really that consistent Georgia team that we were looking for. ETN had his struggles once in a while. He had a couple injuries bouncing back from that. Didn't have that, Oscar Delp. He didn't really perform how he was supposed to. I think for that pick, I'd definitely go with Georgia there. They just never really got back to that dominant look that we were waiting for.
Right, and they came in, I believe, at number one in the polls, in the preseason poll. They were at the one, and they did not live up to that at all. I mean, going to, what, eight overtimes against Georgia Tech when you've spent the whole season talking about how good the SEC is, and you go to 8 overtimes against a middle to bottom of the pack ACC team. I mean, I agree. Completely disappointing season. You know, it wasn't really close. It just wasn't good. And I think even if Carson Beck was healthy, I think nothing would have changed. I don't think that it would have been good. Yeah, it would have been. But my pick
problems.
Oh yeah, it was just never going to be the year for Kirby Smart. It just never was. My pick was, I mean, Florida State being number 10 in the preseason polls. I mean, they had they won 2 games. So to be ranked at number 10 going into a season, to go 2-10 and 1-7 in your conference, it was just atrocious. And you're only 1 win coming against Cal in the conference. So very, very disappointing season for Mike Norvell. DJ looked terrible. I mean, he was so highly touted as a transfer coming out of Clemson, and he just fell so hard onto his face after he left Dabo. And I just really think that Norvell is kind of stuck in last season where they super controversially didn't make the playoffs. I think they were as a mindset, as that team, they were still messed up from that. And I think that the AP kind of favored them too much, because they lost Jared Verse and Braden Fisk, and they lost, Jordan Travis and Benson, and
Johnny Wilson.
Yeah, and Keon Coleman. They lost their whole squad.
You're right.
And for them to come in at number 10 in the are you kidding? Like, DJ is not a good quarterback. He was not, I don't know why the projection for him was super high. He didn't even have a good season 2 seasons ago. That was just stupid. I mean, hindsight is 20/20, but when you have a team that won 2 games at number 10 in the preseason, something went wrong.
Yeah.
For sure. So who did you have as your most surprising team? Because I know who mine is.
Yeah. Surprising. So Notre Dame, I would say, if you look at their roster, you look at their talent, it's not superior to pretty much any of those teams in the playoff. Even I would say Tennessee probably has more talent on both sides of the ball. Mm-hmm. What Marcus Freeman did with that team, that was special. But personally, even like a Georgia Tech, I thought they might be a little sleeper pick early. They beat FSU, went on that little run. But just what Marcus Freeman did this season, bringing them into let's be real though. The real sleeper team was Indiana. Like, nobody came into this year thinking Kirk Cincinnati, he talked a lot all season long, all preseason long about what they were going to do. Nobody really believed him. He came over from Washington, and he's delivering. Or JMU, sorry. Came over from JMU, and he's delivering. He delivered. Everyone called them frauds. They lost that big game to Ohio State. But, I mean, we could say the Notre Dame game was a blowout, but to be honest, they were in that game for most of it. If Jeremiah Love doesn't break a 98-yard touchdown, who knows how that one goes. So, definitely Indiana.
Yeah. I would 100% agree. I put Indiana to go from a team that was 3-9. Your quarterback transfers to Cincinnati. You bring in this guy who coached James Madison. He coached Elon. He hasn't coached any big program ever. And he brings in as Deion Sanders said, he brought his luggage, and it wasn't Louis Vuitton. It was Samsonite. So he brought his boys, and very, very strong recruiting transfer class. I mean, he sold the vision, bringing in Curtis Rourke from Ohio, 5th-year senior, absolutely balled out, played the entire season with a partially torn ACL. Also, he had thumb surgery halfway through the season and played through it. To turn a team that was 3-9 to a team that went 11-2, made the first ever 12-team playoff. He won like every single Coach of the Year award that there was to win. And yeah, complete surprise. Nobody. I mean, they were picked to finish second to last in
Right.
the Big Ten. I also want to shout out Arizona State. They were picked to finish last in the Big 12. Kenny Dillingham did a great job making the playoffs, winning, getting the bye. Scadaboo, Levitt, future is bright with Sam Levitt. So, I just think that the history of Indiana is so bad, and for Cignetti to turn it around in 1 year. If it was Kenny Dillingham's first year in Arizona State, I might pick him, but Cignetti came in, talked his crap, and backed it up immediately. And the future is bright too. They brought in Fernando Mendoza. They've already got a strong class going for next year. So he just completely turned that school into a football school in a season, essentially. So yeah, definite, and no one was expecting it either.
That whole Big 12, you had Colorado, BYU, Arizona State, all predicted at the bottom, and they ended up being up there, 4-way tie, whatever it was up there. So just surprising year from the Big 12 in general.
Yeah, if we had a category for like most entertaining conference, you would have to go Big 12 because you never knew who was going to win. You really didn't, because like Kansas they were like 3-9, 4-8, and they had a streak where they beat like Colorado and BYU in 2 straight weeks or something like that. I mean, just entertaining games week in and week out. You never knew who was going to win. You want to say the SEC is good? No. Watch the Big 12. The Big 12 was very entertaining this year for sure. So yeah, who did you have for most disappointing team?
Most disappointing team. Honestly, I wouldn't say they're the most disappointing, but Kansas, as we were talking about, how they started. They definitely, with their talent, you would think out of Jalen Daniels, Devin Neal, got Kobe Bryant over there, you would think they would be better than they were. They got on that little streak at the end. But most disappointing team, I'd probably have to go FSU, because just how you guys, they've still been talking since then about, we missed the playoffs because of Jordan Travis. They got whooped absolutely in that bowl game. And then you come in, lose to Georgia Tech week 1, which was like, okay, well, you got upset. Stuff like that happens. Right. But they really never got back on that high horse. It's overseas.
It's Ireland, yeah.
Right, yeah. And then they just never
agreed.
Got to their form. Just never got back to it.
Yeah, mine was Florida State too. They got rattled. That I think they were just rattled the whole year. You lose in Ireland in the first game of the season. Okay, 3-point loss. I just don't think that Mike Norvell is that guy as a coach. I mean, as a coach, if you go lose a game, you're highly ranked, you get upset, there's a certain level of addressing of your team that needs to happen. And I really don't think he ever did that. I think he just kept running the guys back out there and saying, show me something different. And they just never did. And, complete disappointment of a season. I mean, I like the team. I got nothing against Florida State as a team, as a school, but complete flop of a season. I mean, you go from 14-0 to 2-10. I get it, you lost players, but, like, it's as a program, that just doesn't happen, especially with an elite program like Florida State.
Yeah, and that just speaks to the poor development for all the coaches and all the staff there. That should never happen. Never.
So who did you have as the most clutch player of this season?
Most clutch player. Now, this is a tough one, but personally, if you look at a guy like Jack Sawyer, what he did, like I said, in that Texas game with the strip sack touchdown, what he did just in that Michigan game, didn't end up winning them the game. But I think every time he needed to play, he was there. And then you look at Cam Scadaboo, what he did in the playoffs. They just gave him the ball. Everyone knew he was getting the ball. But what did he do? He performed. He brought him back. He threw a touchdown. So I would have to say it's in between Scadaboo or Jack Sawyer for me, personally.
I would 100% agree on Scadaboo. I mean, he obviously. I remember last year watching some games and being like, "This dude is crazy. He's throwing passes, he's catching balls, and he's running. Like, who is this guy?" And then he had a complete coming out party this season. And yeah, I mean, most clutch player in college football. I think Jeremiah Smith is a close second. And it's crazy because we're talking about awards for this guy, and he's 17. And it will, assuming he continues on this path, he's going to be probably the best wide receiver prospect ever. I mean, you look at what he's done as 17. He should still be in high school, and he's doing this to like fifth-year seniors in the national championship with literally everything on the line. And I think you would be completely comfortable saying, well, he's a freshman. He's young. It's understandable that he didn't make that play, but he's making the plays. Like he's a vet, but he's so young. I'm very excited. I just really hope they bring in a quarterback who will be able to feed him, who will be able to make the plays, because obviously Will Howard won't be there. It'll be very interesting to see what Ryan Day does. But yeah, I think
there now. So.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. But so what did you have for biggest controversy?
Controversy. Personally, I mean, you could go to a lot of stuff, but obviously, when you look at the playoff, the committee, that's probably the biggest one that people are still going to go back to. The Indiana over the Alabama, which honestly, to me personally, I think it was the right move. If you look at it, Alabama, they went into that bowl game, had all their starters pretty much, had Milroe, Bernard, all those guys, Ryan Williams, played a Michigan team who pretty much physically dominated them the whole game. Bama had, a couple big plays because of their talent, but I don't think it would have been any different of them going down to South Bend and playing. So that's my biggest controversy, definitely that playoff committee. It's what people are still talking about to this day.
I think it's a controversy, but it's not. Because it was a controversy when it first happened, but now I think everyone knows. Everyone knows.
Yeah.
South Carolina lost to Illinois. I mean, it was like Big Ten, SEC bowl games. The Big Ten was like 5-1. And, SEC teams losing everywhere. And you're supposed to be like, South Carolina was supposed to be a playoff team. And they lost to Illinois, who never even sniffed the playoff conversation. So I think that the Heisman was the biggest controversy of the year, without a doubt. I personally think Genty should have got it, and I can understand why someone makes the Travis Hunter, but it's like he never really was elite in either position. I know he made insane plays and had great plays at both positions, but the elite production consistently was lacking for me, and I just think that Genty was you want to say 30 carries, whatever. There are plenty of other backs getting 30 carries in games, and they're not putting up these numbers. And against the stacked boxes, obviously closest Heisman race ever. I think that Genty got robbed, and I think that it's kind of a Coach Prime Colorado situation. But obviously deserves his flowers. It'll be very interesting to see where Travis Hunter goes in the draft and what they're going to allow him to do in the NFL, for sure. Right. But for me, biggest controversy, not even close. Yeah. So what did you have for most intense rivalry game of the season?
I mean, I think we all know what this one is. The game, Michigan, Ohio State. We see how those tempers flared at the end of the game. Jack Sawyer snatching the flag. You had the cops on the field, pepper spraying. Had guys getting jumped over there, guys getting beat up over there. That game was just feisty, hard. That was that tough Big Ten football. Not a lot of points, a lot of defense. It was just a lot of beautiful football there. The Red River rivalry, really, I don't think we had that this year. Didn't live up to it. And, so the game for sure.
Yeah. When you really think about it, not too many of the rivalry games were close this year. I mean, the game, obviously, it's a huge upset. Michigan owns Ohio State. Like, if this would be the year for Ohio State to win at home, number 2 in the shoe, Michigan has had a terrible year, and they still lose. it just, makes you question, are they ever going to be able to win? I mean, when, if not now, when? I mean, and then, obviously, and then, Ohio government making it a felony to plant the flag at the shoe. I mean, that is the ultimate, like, sore loser move. Like, win the game. If you don't want someone planning, you're like exactly. 3 touchdown favorites. Win the game. It's you have the people, you have the players, you have the hype. Just win the game. Yeah, but I think Indiana Purdue, even though it was not close at all, it had been close in years prior. Two schools who really dislike each other, by the way. One of the more intense rivalries across all sports, but 66-0, just a curb stomping. I think it sent a huge message from Indiana, because coming off that Ohio State loss, you really didn't know how are they going to respond. Like, are they for real? And then you go and drop 66 on I mean, one of the worst teams in football, college football, but nevertheless, Notre Dame beat them 66-7. Indiana beat them 66-0. Kind of cemented them in the playoffs, in my opinion. But yeah, I think obviously the game, most definitely. And then, what'd you have for best uniform design?
This one was a tough one. I really liked those Notre Dame ones. It was like they had the gold lettering. Oregon always has nice uniforms out there. I like Arizona State's a little bit, but personally, the best total uniform this year, it's a bit a tough one. I would have to say, me personally, I'm a fan of the classics. I think the classic white from Texas, that's really pretty to me. That'd probably be my pick. Just the white helmet, it's got the white with the orange lettering. I think that's my classic pick.
I mean, yeah. You can never go wrong with the classics. I mean, obviously, you think of like Ohio State, Michigan with the classics. I went with the Oregon, the eggshell, Oregon. Those were pretty cool. I mean, they're relatively new. I think they would look really hard, and not too much conversation to be had about this topic. But I just thought that those eggshell uniforms were very clean. Yeah. So moving on to the overall offensive player of the year. Who was your pick?
I'd probably say Ashton Jeanty. I just think what he brought to that team, nobody else could have done. Brought them, Boise to that great record. If you take him off that football team, they're probably last in the Mountain West. I think they have a little bit of talent surrounding him, but definitely he carried that offense all season. You could look at any other skill guys around the nation. Their offense had support with them. And Travis Hunter definitely had support. You got Jeremiah Smith had a ton of support. So I definitely think Scadaboo, he didn't have that much support either, but Sam Levitt, his thought of his legs definitely helped with his rushing too. Mm-hmm. So
I agree 100%. I mean, no one is scared of Maddox Manson. I mean, right. No one is scared of Cam Camper. I mean, when your leading receiver is a transfer from an Indiana team that went 3-9 and was terrible, and that's your leading receiver at a Boise State team, it really shows you how much Jeanty did for that team. And I mean, it's not like they have an elite offensive line either. I mean, right. They just kind of had a stock, just kind of generic offensive line, and you put up Barry Sanders numbers. I mean, come on. Like, that's best player in college. I think just best all-around player in college football. Mm-hmm. That's obvious. Yeah. Or offensive player by a mile, for sure. Who'd you have for best defensive player?
Defensive player. I would probably say, this is tough. I went for Colin Simmons, very underrated guy. I'll just give him his flowers there. Abdul Carter is definitely up there. His ability to affect games. He literally destroyed the offenses all year. His ability to get off the ball, you could see that was affecting Boise a lot. Luckily for them, he got injured, early. He really never got back to his form after that. So for me personally, I'd probably say a guy like Abdul Carter. He just consistently disrupted offenses every week. basically unblockable. Just the pure talent. He's probably be a top 5 pick for that.
I agree. I mean, he was putting up those numbers with that shoulder, which he could barely even. He wasn't even using his one arm, and he was single arm pass rushing, and like dominating and winning. And that's just it. Just shows you how much grit he has as a player. One guy I do want to shout out of Boston College. I'm probably going to butcher his last name. It's Donovan Ezuraku. He had 16 and a half sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 80 tackles. He's gonna whoever gets him in the draft is gonna get a monster very late. So just keep an eye out for him because 16 and a half sacks. The ACC it's a decent conference. It's not like he's at Bowling Green putting up those numbers. He's in a power 4 conference now, right, putting up 16 and a half sacks. I mean, there maybe was like one guy. Yeah, there was a guy out of Marshall with 17 sacks, but like that's Marshall. You're in a power. You're playing like Syracuse and Clemson and all those schools. And yeah, he's definitely a sleeper pick for me. But yeah, for sure. So who'd you have for for freshman of the year? I think I just kind of gave it away.
Well, I would say early in the year, everybody was on that Ryan Williams bandwagon. I mean, just what he was doing week to week was just insane. And then teams kind of figured it out with him, and it kind of slowed him down. Then you had a guy like Jeremiah Smith. Every week you see this guy as a big play, 50-yard touchdown here. And then what he did in that Rose Bowl was like something we've never seen before. 2 40-plus yard touchdowns to start the game. And then even last night in that national championship, this guy makes the play, the biggest play of the game. You rely on your freshman to do that. 56-yard catch on 3rd and 11. That's my pick right there. Offensive player of the year.
Yeah, for sure. Because I agree. At the beginning, everyone was talking about, oh my goodness, Ryan Williams is 17, and then Jeremiah Smith's like, yeah, I'm 17 too. Like I'm just as old as this guy, and I can be more productive at a higher level than this guy. It was really intriguing because, there was not too much conversation about him. For how strong as he'd been, he kind of came out of the shadows like later in the season. Even though he had such a productive year throughout the whole year, it was once defenses figured out Ryan Williams, as you said, once they started locking him down, it was like, all right, who is the freshman now? And it's Jeremiah Smith. So for sure, 71 receptions, 1,227 yards, 14 touchdowns, and the game-sealing catch in the national championship. I think by a mile, easily, Jeremiah Smith. Yeah. So who'd you have for Coach of the Year?
Honestly, Ryan Day was definitely in the back of my mind, but I still can't get over that loss to Michigan. And, he still hasn't beat them, so I'd probably give it to a guy like Marcus Freeman. Like I said, I don't think Notre Dame was the most talented team in that playoff, but he willed his team to that national championship. Riley Leonard, he made him tough. He finished off that season well. I think maybe if, some things go the right way, they win that national championship, him being, one of the youngest head coaches to do it, he's definitely up there. And then also want to give a shout out to Kenny Dillingham, like you said, just bringing that Arizona State team to the playoffs, almost beating Texas if it wasn't for a botched coverage on 4th down. So definitely think I have to give it to Marcus Freeman.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I mean, Marcus Freeman, the season was over after you lose to NIU at home. The season is over. Everyone wrote them off. They were done, right? They're not going to do anything. But that is the advantage of the 12-team playoff. These teams get to make a mistake in the seasons now and still make the playoffs. And I think that it's great because it ensures that the best teams make the playoffs. You can make a mistake now and still get in. What you can't do is make like 3 or 4 mistakes like Alabama, like Miami, like the teams who didn't get in but complained about not getting in. The standard is still the standard. You can't make 4 mistakes and still get in. You can make a slip. I mean, granted, it was a huge slip to NIU, but just the way that Freeman rallied the boys is just tremendous. I mean, tremendous. Great coaching. You fall short in the national championship, but hey, You brought him there, and especially after basically just being eliminated in week 2 or 3 or whatever it was. So yeah, that props to Marcus Freeman for sure. So who did you have for breakout star of the year?
Yeah. I couldn't give this one to Jeremiah Smith personally because I mean he came in 5-star, number 1 player in the nation. A guy like Drew Allar definitely, I would say, surprised a lot of people. He had his struggles last season, but I think this year he was just a pure passer. He was delivering the ball exactly where you needed it to. Not a lot of turnovers, just very consistent until that game. Made one bad mistake, things happen. But personally, that's my guy right there, Drew Allar. Just very consistent with the ball. Didn't really make too many mistakes. And yeah.
I mean, yeah, for this award you can obviously go with Genty, you could go with Cam Ward, but I'm gonna give this to Lenoris Sellers out of South Carolina. He had a tremendous season. I mean, South Carolina picked not to do very well. You come in, you win some huge games, you beat your rivals Clemson. He's just had a great year. They almost beat Bama. They were very close to coming out of some huge wins, and he just took tremendous strides as a quarterback. Great season. I mean, kind of an unconventional pick, but you don't want to give all the awards to Genty and Cam Ward, so I'm going to go in Lenoris Sellers for that one. So who'd you have as most underrated player of this season?
Yeah, definitely still coming out of the SEC, I'd have to go with Jackson Dart for sure. What he was doing, even late on that ball, like he was just every week just airing it out, consistently throwing, multiple touchdowns a game, 400 yards a week. He was just very, very good, and people didn't talk about him enough. Another guy would probably be like Cade Klubnik. Maybe if they could have got it done in Texas, it would have been a different story. But those two definitely brought it, and a lot of people still aren't talking about him. Just overshadowed by a guy like Jalen Milroe, who definitely didn't have his best season. Overshadowed even by Lenoris Sellers, as you said. But those two guys definitely need their flowers for how well they play this year.
100%. I agree. Jackson Dart, very special. And, you can't put some of those losses on him. Some of the losses were on coaching and defense, but he still had a very strong year. And I feel like nobody, even still now, postseason, is even talking about him at all. Right. I think as a quarterback, he's very strong. I mean, there's obviously going to be some holes in his game, but he surprised me, and every time you flip on the television, it looked like he was making a tremendous play in some way. And, I mean, literally not even talked about in the Heisman. Didn't even get any Heisman votes. Granted, he didn't deserve to win, but he deserves at least a little bit of recognition. I mean, Curtis Rourke got 2 first-place Heisman votes. I mean, he had a great season, but, yeah, I mean, to not even mention Jackson Dart at all, kind of a little bit. I mean, I think it's also because of people's disdain for Lane Kiffin. They don't really like him, and he was kind of whining on Twitter, and people were like, we're on a different level. Well, why can't you beat Big Ten schools? So, but Jackson Dart, 100%, that's who I put. So what did you have for best game of the year?
This one's very tough. And I think it differs personally by, people's type of game they like to watch, Personally, me, I'm a defensive guy. I like to watch defensive battles. I like to watch those tough rivalry games. So I would have to give it to the game, Just, it was a defensive battle the whole time. You never knew. You were waiting. Who's going to make the big play? Who's going to take away with this one? And it never really happened. Just straight 60 minutes of fighting, toughness, and you could just tell these two teams hated each other all year. That would definitely be my pick. The Arizona State, Texas, that definitely lived up to it. To be honest, kind of surprising. That's up there for sure, though. But, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, first I want to give kind of recognition to a game that I don't think too many people watched, but Syracuse against Miami, where Syracuse came out, it was like 49-42 or something like that. That was a tremendous game. Kyle McCord was balling out. That Syracuse defense stepped up when it needed to. Fran Brown, I mean, playing for Clemson's playoff lives. But that was a tremendous game. But I'm going to give this to Georgia, Alabama. I mean, Georgia down 30-7. They come all the way back. It's 34-33. You know, all of the momentum in the world is on Georgia's side. And Jalen Milroe hucks one up to Ryan Williams. And that was it. And yeah. Tremendous game. That game clears any other game, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely
clear and obvious.
That Ryan Williams play made all the difference in that one. That was just one of the most insane plays I've ever seen, catching it and spinning off two defenders, scoring a touchdown in 2 minutes left. That's just, we don't see stuff like that every day.
And that put him into the spotlight. That was
Right.
like, all right, who is this guy? Who is this freshman? And after that, you kind of are like, wow. And I mean, obviously, we talked about the rest of his season, but just a great game, great play. Although it kind of did go downhill from there for both schools, but that was still a great game to watch. So, what do you have for biggest upset of the season?
This one, if it wasn't week 1 in Ireland, I'd definitely give it a Georgia Tech. But, given the fact that was a week 1 game, it's overseas, things are things. I would definitely give it to Michigan because, I mean, what were they, 3 touchdown, underdogs? And they came in that game. They came in that game ready to go, ready to fight and protect that streak that they have going. And just a complete, utter, just horrible game from the Ohio State offense. Will Howard, probably his worst game of the year. Michigan came in there, knew what they wanted to do, got it done. So that would be my pick.
Yeah, I mean, I've got 2 Alabama games for this. So my first one, clear and obvious for me, is Vandy. Vandy going in there, Vandy at home winning, and Saban saying only place that's easy to play in the SEC is Vandy. You got Diego Pavia coming from JUCO. I mean, you can't name a single player on that team. Let's be honest. And I mean, they just took it to them. I mean, 40-35 was a close game, but if you watched, I think Vanderbilt went wire to wire. I could be wrong, but they were up 14-0 at one point. Jalen Milroe threw a pick six. So that was like shocking because Vanderbilt is like always bad, right? They are just never in any conversation of any kind. And you come in and beat Bama, who at the time was number 1 in the country. That was huge. And then I had Oklahoma 24-3 over Bama. You're three touchdown dogs, and you win by 21 points. And that was just the icing on the cake for no one in their right mind could make an argument for Alabama being in the playoffs after that. You roll in your three touchdown favorites, and you put up 3 points to an Oklahoma team who's like not even good comparably to their seasons, like where they've had Mayfield and Kyler Murray. They've not even been close to being good. So those were 2 of the biggest upsets, in my opinion, of the year, and both on Bama. So what'd you have for transfer with the biggest impact, or just best transfer player all around?
I'd probably have to go, Caleb Downs. Like, we see what he did last year at Bama. He was pretty much the best safety in the nation last year. He came over to Ohio State and really continued that. He had that big punt return against Indiana. A lot of people in the nation didn't know he could do that. So he was just very consistent, pretty much added to that already stout Ohio State defense, and I think that's what took them over the top, making sure, nothing else could go through that way. He'd definitely be my pick, for sure. Or even a Quinshon Judkins, he came over from Ole Miss. People knew about him, but didn't know about how talented he actually was, and I think he showed throughout these playoffs. He was unstoppable. Like you saw last night, 3 touchdowns. He just wanted it more. So one of those 2 guys for sure.
Yeah, I had Caleb Downs down there. It wasn't too crazy of a transfer class, to be honest. There
Right.
weren't too many studs. I mean, you going in, I thought that Isaiah Bond would be the guy at Texas. I think that Silas Bolden had a really big impact coming from Oklahoma State to Texas. He was kind of more a return specialist. They didn't really get him going in the offense too much. That was disappointing. I mean, you bring in him and Isaiah Bond, and you figure, and you've got Golden, and you figured, I mean, that's going to be one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country, but it just didn't turn out that way. Very disappointing season from Texas, I would say. With Quinn Ewers and all that stuff.
Yeah,
but
I personally think,
I would say Caleb Downs. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I personally think, you could just tell like Ewers wasn't really on his game this year. I think it was just a really surprising move. He recently announced he's entering the draft. I think that's very surprising. I think he needs another year in development. He knows it's Arch Manning season now. I think even that little Arch Manning rushing game kind of saved him most of these a lot of times. So Ewers just didn't have the best year, and that's really what kept Texas down where they were.
Yeah, I agree because expectations are always so high, right? In Texas, and and they made the playoffs, but you lose that game to Ohio State, and talent-wise, two of the most talented teams in the country. You figured it would have been a great game, and it was a decent game, but I just didn't think that Sark had his guys ready. He just got outcoached. Truly, he didn't. I mean, running a toss sweep from the 1 yard line, you deserve to lose that game. You're going to run a sweep from the 1 yard line with a running back, and you lose 7 yards. You just don't deserve. That's not the right coaching. You just don't deserve to win that game at all.
No.
So who'd you have for best fan base?
Best fan base. This was tough. Personally, I mean, I love the Indiana fan base. They were, I think they travel well, decently. I wouldn't say Indiana was the toughest place to play this year. You had a place like Oregon didn't really have the top fan base either. Texas is pretty high on my boards for sure. Then definitely Notre Dame. I think the difference between Notre Dame is they're one of those schools. It's just so much tradition there. They have alums coming back, everything like that. So I'd probably give it personally to a Notre Dame, maybe A&M if they were just better this year, because they always have a great atmosphere at Kyle Field. But I'd probably give it a Notre Dame.
I would agree, Notre Dame, 100%. I like your call out of Indiana fans. I mean, they started the season, nobody was there, they had no expectations. It was just very, very cool and inspiring to see the way that their fan base, each game they start getting more and more and more and more, and then they're 5-0, 6-0, 7-0, 8-0, 9-0, and you get the first sellout in like 10 years, and then the rest of the season is sold out in like week 6. And it was very just cool to see how the impact that Kurt Signetti had on an entire fan base, to where now there's fans who didn't even give a crap about the Indiana football last year who are now like, we're never daunted, we're coming back, we're next season Fernando Mendoza, I'm itching for the next season to start, and they were more focused on basketball at this time last year. So very inspiring, but I would just say, Notre Dame, toughest place to play. I've been to games at Notre Dame Stadium. It's electric, very loud. It's sneakily loud in there. You don't really pin it as one of the louder stadiums. You would go to like Neyland Stadium or the Shoe or something like that, but 100%, like very loud, very authentic experience. And like you said, there's so much tradition. With the Here Come the Irish and the push-ups after the touchdowns and just the leprechaun and all that stuff, very electric. And that kind of plays into our last topic, which is the best stadium atmosphere. I would also give that to Notre Dame, just electric stadium as it is. What was your pick?
Yeah, definitely Notre Dame. And then probably a sleeper there would be, not a sleeper, but, just going to a historic place like the Shoe, you always come there, Tennessee. you could see maybe in that first half, Amirliov was a little shook up. But, that's one of those places, once you get going there, it's really easy, to feel like the villain, like you're in an MSG or a Philly. And that really boosts players more than it, hurts them. So I definitely give it to Notre Dame. Just that underrated noise factor and that tradition is just something you really can't fight too much against because it'll tear you down quick.
So that'll wrap up this part, but I just wanted to just get your takes on what are some of your biggest takeaways of the season? Do you agree? Do you think that the 12-team playoff worked out? What were just kind of your biggest takeaways from this year?
I definitely think the 12-team playoff is something that we've been waiting for a long time because I feel like, even all the way back in those days when we had BCS, we got 1 versus 2 playing, which as we saw in the NFL, regular season doesn't really show anything. The whole NFC North is eliminated after 2 weeks in the playoffs. So I think having that 12-team playoff with you winning your Power 4 conference, getting a bid is definitely very important because I feel like that's a fair choice. Clemson got in, they earned it. I think that's better. You want a team that's hot at the end, just because the team's, like FSU's undefeated. I don't think they would have came in the playoffs and surprised anybody. So I definitely think that 12-team playoff was a smart way to go, and I hope we see it continue.
I 100% agree. I mean, they're already talking about expanding it to more teams. I think that could get out of hand at a certain point if you put too many teams in, but I think 12 is perfect. I mean, no matter how many teams you put in, there's still going to be people complaining. That's just how it goes. I think that the way that it's seeded could be just shifted a little bit. I think the top 4 should get automatic buys, but I think regardless, if you win your conference, you should be in. I don't think you should be guaranteed a bye, but I think you should maybe be guaranteed home field advantage in the first round or something like that. I think that bye was a bit too much because it kind of gave some of the schools an easier path to the championship. Regardless, I think that everyone who made it deserved to be there. I don't think there was a school. You see in the NFL teams getting destroyed in the playoffs. Did they not deserve to be there? No, of course they deserve to be there. They played the way they played in the regular season. They just didn't bring it in the playoffs, and that's just how it goes sometimes. Every game is not going to be ultra competitive. If it was, then college football would be the most watched sport in the world. If every single game was head to head, Alabama, Georgia, the national championship caliber, then it would literally be the best sport in the world. But that's just not how, unfortunately, that's not how it goes. I think another big takeaway is just in the age of NIL, any team can be good any year. Any team can make the rebound. If you have the money, any team can be good. Indiana, Arizona State, all of these schools with tremendous turnarounds due to NIL, due to coaching. I just think that was probably the biggest takeaway. And transfer portal matters. Transfer portal matters so much now.
Yeah.
But those were my main takeaways from this season.
Definitely, with that NIL money, you see Michigan flipping a guy like Bryce Underwood at the last moment. I feel like maybe Connor Stalions being his QB coach at his high school had something to do with it, but we'll see if they get back to that, national championship stature. They're losing guys like Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, and Will Johnson. But getting a guy like Bryce Underwood could definitely help them in the future. They've never really, they had J.J. McCarthy, but besides that, they've never really had that, number one QB, big guy, big talent. They've never really had that, so it'll definitely be exciting to see what they do with that over there.
100%. And then, just before we wrap up, I want your pick for next year's national champion and your pick for next year's Heisman.
Yeah, so right now, depending on what, like I said, I really liked what Drew Aller did this year. So that probably, unless he goes to the league, which who knows right now, I'd have him as my Heisman. And the way it's looking, teams staying consistent, it's going to be a tough one. But depending on what they have next season, I'd probably have to give it to Penn State. And a team from the SEC, I could probably see, realistically, maybe Texas. Maybe Arch Manning has it. Maybe he comes up big, did what Ewers couldn't do, and gets them there. And, yeah, I think that'd be a tough battle.
Yeah, I agree. You went Penn State, Drew Aller, same team. I'm gonna go same team. I'm picking the homer pick, but I'm going Indiana. I really believe that they can make that jump. Year 2, Signetti. You bring in a guy like Fernando Mendoza from Cal. He put up good numbers there. I think he could be a Heisman candidate. I really do. In that Mike Shanahan offense, that Curtis Rourke, from Ohio, he flourished in the Big Ten. I really think Fernando Mendoza, great pocket passer. He also adds his legs as an elite scrambler. And they brought in good help. They still got Elijah Surratt, great receiver. They brought in a tight end from Tennessee. They've brought in guys. They brought in dudes to that offense, to where he can be a bona fide Heisman candidate. He might not win, but I think he'll be in the conversation for sure. And he's got 2 years of eligibility left. Very interesting. And I think Indiana can pull it off. Because what they did in their first season with guys who transferred in from like Old Dominion and James Madison and Kent State, now they're bringing in guys from Colorado, Ole Miss, Tennessee. It'll be really interesting. But for me, that's my pick. Indiana and Fernando Mendoza to take the Natty and the Heisman.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Thank you guys so much for listening to the Frank Delano Show. It's been a blast. Thanks, Curry, for coming on, chatting some football. We'll be back after the NFL season ends for a similar style podcast, doing the NFL stuff. Best of luck to everyone left in the playoffs. But again, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.